Welcome back to Mohawk Motors, everybody. My name is Jason. We're getting going on part 3 of turning 2 single cabs that are wrecked into 1 single cab that is, I think, pretty nice. And we got to do the drivetrain in this thing. I already have the 2 good frames spliced, or the 2 good frame pieces spliced together, gusseted, reinforced. The whole frame has been blasted and cleaned. We've got good all new brake lines in it. We've got new rubber hoses in the front, all new shocks. What else did I do? New bump stops. Probably a few other odds and ends that I'm forgetting. You can watch the last video. I'll put a link up here to see everything I did to this frame. And I've got it rolled over into position. I'm really just trying to conserve space. I did go ahead. I didn't have any good rear bumpers, so I did have to get a bumper. And for this thing was $100 on Amazon. I'm not upset about it, guys. I mean, it fits okay. I don't think it's nowhere near the quality of a OEM bumper, but for what we're doing, that's a pretty nice bumper for this thing. I went ahead and got that put on, and you can probably hear it. I've got our engine donor pulled in the workshop here, and I'm told these are unusual. The extended cab long bed 1500. I mean, I've seen a ton of these things. They don't seem unusual to me, but this one was side swiped on the passenger side. It's too rusty to be worth fixing. It's not a desirable model, so we're pulling the engine out of this thing. We're going to drop it into our single cab short bed over here, and right now I'm just letting it warm up. I'm going to get it warmed right up to operating temperature and drain all the fluids out of it. It makes it less messy when I move the engine around, and it's also, I want to put clean fluids in it when I put it in this truck anyway, so might as well get them nice and hot. Do a hot drain on the oil, hot drain on the transmission and transfer case. Even though we're not using those, we're going to use the transmission and transfer case original to the truck because they're lower mileage. And yeah, I think that's it for now. I'll let it keep running a little longer. You can hear it's a nice quiet 5.3. Idle smooth, no noises. So I'm gonna let it get up to temp, and then I'll get it up in the air, get the fluid started draining, and then we'll start pulling the engine and transmission and drivetrain out of this thing. Well, everybody, I'm accidentally up too late. It's like 12:30. I really wanted to try to get the drivetrain out of this thing tonight, but I just didn't quite get there. Everything is disconnected underneath. The transmission cross member is out, drive shafts are out, electrical is disconnected, fuel is disconnected, everything underneath is undone. And the cooling system is all disconnected on the top, air intake obviously, air conditioning, fan shroud, front support obviously. So I've only got a little bit left to unhook up here. I got to disconnect the throttle, the electrical, and then the motor mounts, and this thing will be ready to lift up out of here. I'm pulling the whole drivetrain, engine, transmission, and transfer case all as a unit. It just makes it easier. And especially in this case, like I was underneath, I dropped the front differential out of it and the engine cross member underneath. So I've got plenty of space underneath. I can pull the whole drivetrain as a unit, and then I'll have plenty of room to get the transmission separated from the engine. And this thing is, she's dirty. So I'm probably gonna go ahead and take it out, and once I get it out of the truck, I'm gonna hose it off, pressure wash it, and try to clean it up a little bit, make it look a little better. It looks like it's had some leaky valve cover gaskets for quite a while, so I'll throw a set of valve cover gaskets on it, The oil pan underneath is pretty filthy, so in my opinion, basic maintenance. I'll put an oil pan gasket and an oil pickup tube O-ring in it while I've got it out of the truck, and that way it won't need to be worried about for the next owner. Good news is it looks like this thing has had a water pump installed on it recently, a fan clutch pretty recently, a radiator pretty recently. So there's some nice, relatively new parts on this, and it'll just be a nice compliment to the single cab. So my real goal, it's Tuesday night now. I really want to try to get this thing, at least get the drivetrain set back in it by Friday night, because this weekend I have some other stuff going on that I want to work on. I'd like to get this truck out of here, both of these out of here, and have the lifts available this weekend for the other projects that I have that I need to get done. So we'll see how things go, but that's it for tonight. I got to go in and get some sleep. I have an appointment in the morning that you guys will see in another video that I'm pretty excited about. And yeah, that's it for now. See you guys tomorrow. All right, folks, it's the next evening. I'm back down here in the workshop, obviously, and I'm getting back on this thing. I've still got to get the electrical undone, the power steering, transmission cooler lines, and then motor mounts. And then I think I'm ready to lift this thing out of here. And that's my goal for the evening. Get the engine, get this drivetrain out, get the transmission and transfer case separated from the engine. That way tomorrow afternoon I can get outside, I can pressure wash the engine so it's ready for some new gaskets and some new seals. And then get it into this chassis. And the nice thing too is this frame has the motor mount plates that I need to put onto that frame to convert it from V6 to V8. So enough chit chat. I'm going to get everything apart. I'll bring you guys back when the engine's hanging. All right, everybody. Here's where I'm at. I'm calling it for the night. I am so tired, but I made good progress. So obviously I've got the engine out, transmission out. I had the transfer case out also. It's sitting over there from this truck. But once I got this engine and transmission out, I noticed this. And the fluid inside of that transmission actually looks a little bit better than the fluid inside of that transmission did. So possibly, hopefully, this has been rebuilt more recently. This, I believe, is an original transmission. And what I'm really hoping is when they did the rebuild in this thing, they did all of the updates and improvements to make it better than a factory one. So I had another adapter to transfer case gasket here in stock. So I just took off the original transfer case, got the transfer case that I'm using bolted back on, sealed up tight. All the breathers, hoses, all that stuff is where it belongs. And that is ready to be pressure washed tomorrow. I'll roll it outside, get it as clean as I possibly can, and then get my new oil pan and valve cover gaskets on it, as well as a new pickup tube O-ring inside the oil pan. And then that will be ready to sit into this frame. Now, one other thing that I had to do to prep is change the motor mount brackets. That frame, you'll remember, had a V6 engine. This one was the V8. And the motor mount brackets for this side and this side are different between V6 and V8. Now, fortunately, they're both four-wheel drive, so that eliminates a little bit of complexity. So I took the motor mount brackets out of this frame. And got them bolted into this frame and painted up to match everything else. So now My motor mount brackets are right. My transmission cross member is right. Everything's painted, everything's ready. So tomorrow, like I said, I'll get that engine pressure washed off, do my couple little gasket changes, and then sit it down in the frame. And once I have it sitting in the frame, I got new exhaust manifold bolts. We'll see how many of them twist off. There's only one that's currently missing its head, but I'm extremely skeptical that I will get the remaining 11 off without breaking at least a couple more. So I'll get all the new exhaust manifold bolts in there once it's sitting in the frame, and then and then I'll get my new fuel lines put on. I have new stainless fuel supply, fuel return, and evap lines, so I'll get those put in. I'm trying this kit out. I've never done this before. I think it's called Quick Fix Fuel Line Kit or something along those lines. I mean, it's not hard line like the factory lines are. It's all this braided stainless line. But that should work just fine for what we're doing. It's just a stock truck. So I'll get that done hopefully tomorrow too. It's too late. I'm too tired. I gotta get some rest. Yeah, it's 11:15. So I'm gonna go up and get some sleep, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, team. Well, it's the next evening now, and I got some stuff done this afternoon in prep. I was able to come out for a little bit while my kids were resting. My wife was able to keep an eye on them while she was finishing up work for the day. Thank you, Meg. And that let me get a little jump start on what I really needed to do and really wanted to do and get done today. Because I have stuff to do this weekend, and I was feeling kind of stressed over being able to get everything prepped and ready to do that stuff. So, as you can see, engine is back. Engine, transmission, transfer case are back in. I've got the motor mounts bolted down tight. You probably notice also, I got the broken off exhaust manifold bolt replaced on this side, and only had one other one break off when I took them out. So. And the rear one I was able to just get out with an extractor pretty easily. And the front one I was able to get out with vice grips pretty easily. So pretty lucky on that front. So that's all put back together. I reused the stock gasket. Those multi-layer steel gaskets, guys, they work. There's no need to replace them. So that's all back together. Drive shaft is bolted in, obviously. And passenger side is all bolted down. I didn't bolt down the transmission mount yet. I'll get to that probably when I get the thing lifted up on the lift again. But what I'm focused on right now, what I'm trying to do here is get this quick fix fuel lines routed, plumbed, and sorted out. And they didn't come with any instructions, but I think I've got it figured. So the way this works now is we've got the supply line, which is female on both ends, because one end connects to the filter, one end connects to the fuel rail, and then this little jumper section runs from the filter to the factory feed. Now, an important note here is make sure when you take off your factory lines that you save these little plastic clips, because the kit does not come with new ones. So you're gonna need to reuse your stock ones on your supply and your return fittings. The other thing I noticed in just kind of trying to fit this up is my little, I'm gonna call it a bridge, my little bridge hose here that goes from the feed over to the filter isn't quite long enough to use the factory filter mount where it's located up here. So I'm looking at it. I might be able to move it a little bit. I don't think so though. Yeah, I can't move it. So I'm gonna use, they give a bunch of these nice insulated hose clamps, plenty of little stainless bolts to utilize them. I'm just gonna use those and try to get it as neat and tidy as I can. The evap line seems to be plenty long to run from the connection at the engine back here to the evap line. And oh, actually, this is my return. This is the return line. This is my evap line. So my return seems to be plenty long, and I'll just need to fit up and make sure the evap is long enough. So I'm gonna get after it here, guys. All right, well, as you saw, I had to do a little messing around to get this to a place that I'm happy, but I got it. So I've got my feed, my return, and my evap. They hooked right up to the factory connections, which was nice. I will give them credit. These push connect fittings, they're nice. They hooked right up the way they're supposed to. No problems there. So then I ran down, come around, I had to make a big swoop, another big swoop, and then over, through. Fuel filter is right back in here. Another clamp to keep it secure, and then hooked up to factory feed, factory return, factory evap. So I have a suspicion here that even though it's marketed as for, and the description says it's for a single cab short bed truck, I think this is a universal kit that will fit a single cab, an extended cab, or even a crew cab based on the length of these lines, because all three lines are way longer than they need to be. That's why I had to make all these big swoops in them to try to use up the slack line without putting kinks in it. And you can see also, I'm glad I got the drive shaft in and hooked up, and I went ahead and got the Y pipe in and hooked up because I wanted to make sure I don't want any interference. I don't want these lines to be too close to the exhaust and they're gonna get hot and melt or something else. And I don't want them rubbing against the drive shaft. So I've got these routed in a way that I think they'll be fine. They should be plenty cool. I'm gonna drive this thing and put some miles on it before I sell it. So if by chance I do start having some kind of issues with the fuel getting hot or something like that, then I can go ahead and I'll put some heat wrap or insulating wrap or something like that around these fuel lines to help keep them cool. But as it is, I think it's gonna be fine. I don't think we're gonna have heat issues. I don't think we're gonna have any rubbing or chafing issues. I think it's gonna be good. Especially because this is a return style system. So there is always fuel moving through the feed and return line. So that fuel will help to keep the lines cool as well. And like I said, got the exhaust put on, hooked up, connected, bolted up. Got my oxygen sensors all connected, plugged in, hooked up. I don't know if this is just some country ingenuity or what, but the catalytic converters from the white truck were gutted. There was nothing inside of them. There's a patch cut open and all the stuff knocked out, and then they welded that patch back shut. And the Y pipe that was on this truck had some questionable aftermarket catalytic converters on it. And then even that silver truck had one factory catalytic converter and a mediocre at best installation of an aftermarket converter on the other bank. Fortunately, I had these. This is a stock set of good converters from 2001 that I've had kicking around here for a while. So I was able to put that on. That way, there's not going to be any emissions issues with this thing. If somebody goes if whoever buys this thing lives in a place where they test emissions, check emissions equipment, this thing's going to be just fine. So I think, I got a new AC belt tensioner and AC belt. So I'll get those put on, double check, see if there's anything else. I'll probably put the rear drive shaft in just because it's easier to do it now than it is once it's up on the lift. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going, see what else makes sense to do now rather than once the cab is back on, because this is the time. This is when it's easy, it's accessible, it's wide open. I'm gonna get as much of this stuff done as I can. I'll bring you back in a little bit. Well, folks, it's about 11:30 and I'm calling it for the night. I can't think of anything else I can or should do before I sit the cab back on this thing. Here's where it's at. Like I said before, exhaust is all hooked up. Fuel, supply, return, and evap all hooked up. Front and rear drive shafts are in. I went ahead, I filled the transfer case with new fluid. Oh, I've got the electrical run down the frame on this side. I've got the electrical run down the frame and connected up on this side. Fuel stuff is all hooked up. Oh my goodness, what else? I put my new belt and tensioner on the AC compressor. We've got front shock absorbers bolted, tightened up. I mean, exhaust. I think that's it. I really can't think of anything else that will be easier for me to do now than it will be once the cab is back on the truck. Or really, I can't think of anything else that I can connect before I put the cab back on the truck. So I'm gonna roll this thing right up under there, and then I'm gonna put my tools away. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna get some sleep and actually get to bed at a reasonable time tonight. Let's make sure we don't bust up our transfer case shifter. There we go. A little bit to the right. And that's pretty close. Yep, that's pretty close to where we need to be. I'm gonna finish sleeping up and then put my tools away and go in and go to bed. All right, everybody, it's the next evening. Back down in the workshop. Did a little organization earlier this afternoon to make myself some more space. Got a lot going on tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I'm planning on getting into the transmission for the silver single cab. My buddy Matt is coming to help/learn with that. My father-in-law is coming to borrow the lift to work on his truck. And yeah, busy day. So what I need to do tonight, and how I think I'm gonna wrap this video up, is I need to get this cab back onto this frame. And it's really not too bad. I've got the body mounts over there on the workbench. I'll get the body mounts set onto the mounts on the frame. We'll start bringing the body down. And then as we get close, I'll use a floor jack and just shift the frame around, get it moved into position so I can sit that body right back down where it belongs. So, I think I'll probably time lapse this because it's not a fast process. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's starting to look like a truck again. So I got the cab sat back down on there. All of the cab mounts lined up perfectly. I mean, perfectly. Literally, I just poked the bolt right up in and they just threaded right in by hand. Couldn't have asked for it to line up better. So that's sitting right where it needs to be. Got it back down on the ground. I did get some of the stuff underneath hooked up. Got the transmission mount nuts tightened up because I hadn't done those yet. Park and brake cable connected. Range shifter on the transmission connected. And skid plates on the front. A few little other odds and ends. Steering shaft hooked up just so I can push it around and move it. I need this lift, my big lift, for my father-in-law's truck tomorrow. And that truck doesn't need to be in here anymore. So I'm gonna get this truck over onto the smaller lift to finish it up this coming week. And that way my father-in-law can use the big lift for his truck. But I think that's a good stopping point for this video. Good progress on this one. And it won't be long, not that much left to finish my V8 conversion and then get this thing turned back into a running and driving truck. So, that's it. Till the next video, everybody. Take care.